All right. Well, it is 11:30, so in order to give our guests as much time as we can, we will jump in. I'm Lori Zimmerman, the Director of Professional Learning with MASA, and we are thrilled to have you here with us today. We are equally excited to hear from one of our business partners, two of our business partners, I should say, presenting with us this morning. We have Denise Pontrelli and Julie Kreitz, and they're going to tell us how we should take care of ourselves and each other, particularly as the weather is bad, right? So I'm going to turn it over to them to introduce themselves, to tell a little bit more about why they're here today and what they're doing. And we're just excited to have everybody with us today. So if you are able to turn your cameras on, just because I know it's easier to talk with faces in the room, that's great. We understand if you can't. So Denise and Julie, take it away.
Great. Well, thank you so much. Good morning, everyone. We really appreciate you being here. We know how valuable your time is. And we feel like one of the things that we've learned over the last couple of years with Partner Ed is the message that we continue to hear about educator well-being. And all of us are educators working in education some way or another. And it's important to think about how we can support each other and the people that we work with to be able to put the best foot forward for our students, which is really why we're all here, right? So I'm an educator, still consider myself that. Was in the role of superintendent, lastly in Stillwater, Minnesota, but have been assistant superintendent in Spring Lake Park and Matamidi, teacher, principal, all those kind of things over the past. So with that, I will turn it over to my partner, Julie Kritz, and have Julie share a little bit about herself.
Morning, everyone. I'm Julie Kritz from Alexandria, retired superintendent from Alexandria, but I too have had worn a variety of hats, and recently did an interim position in Clinton, Graceville, Beardsley. So I've had an experience in a different size district as well. So happy to be here, and we are excited to share some thoughts and research around workforce well-being. So I'll start by just sharing the slideshow here. And there we go, Denise.
Right. You already know a little bit about us, and you certainly know the topic because you signed up for it today. So we'll move on with the workforce well-being research and some of the things that we would like to share with you today. Go ahead, Julie. So this isn't a surprise to you if you signed up for this webinar that educators today are overwhelmed, taxed, and emotionally exhausted. And as we said earlier, this really is about people, whatever their level are in education. Our conversation today is really focusing on those who impact instruction the most in the classroom for students. And so when we talk about the things that we're sharing today, it is about paraprofessionals and teachers of all different, whether it's specialists or regular classroom teacher, principals, any of those leaders who are working day to day to help support students. Not that at central office and superintendents we don't, but this is specifically information for them. So I don't have to talk to you anymore about stress and burnout, emotional labor, and lack of support. I'm sure you're aware of many of those things because of your roles. But one of the things that we wanted to share today that we've really heard a lot from the districts that we're working with, not only in Minnesota, but across the country, are that piece about emotional labor and really the exhaustion about working with students and having to help support them with their life challenges. Looking at relationships with colleagues, which has changed since COVID, and especially with some of the turnover within school districts, and just competing life requirements based on what the world looks like today versus what it looked like 4 years ago. All right. So the top reasons for educators leaving, when you look at this, again, this isn't information that's probably that new, but you can see that compensation, many people think it's the compensation are the reason that educators are leaving, but it really is the others that you see before compensation. And so how do we address this? How do we make a difference so that we can keep our qualified, experienced teachers within the classroom? What does this mean for your district? We wanted to share with you just a little bit of some of the statistics or numbers that you could look at about teachers leaving the classroom before retirement, which wasn't really a typical thing that we've had in the past. It was more out of the ordinary for teachers to leave education once they had been in it. We're also sharing a little bit about the cost. You know about teacher turnover, and as you look at any type of retirement or separation agreements, when we look at training new people in and the cost and time for that, there's an impact on districts with that. We also, as we said earlier, know that educators are leaving the profession earlier than they might have planned for other professions. And then finally, that the percentages, when we're looking at urban and rural settings with high percentages of students that have unique needs and are in poverty, those rates are even higher. So these are some statistics that we found that just support what we think is a growing problem, not only in Minnesota, but across the nation. And interestingly enough, one of the conversations that Julie and I had as we were preparing this information for you is, as much as we talk about teacher retention and being concerned about that and finding people to fill positions, Minnesota across the nation is actually one of the states that it's not as big of a deal as it is in some of the other states. So we want to be on top of it and think of different ways we can solve this problem moving forward.
Denise, I just want to add to that, knowing that Minnesota, relatively speaking, is in a better position than many states across the United States. And yet we know that there's a finite number of people who are going into education or who have a teaching license. So we're all competing for those same individuals, and those states who are in dire straits, we coded them with a green, meaning turnover rate and the attrition is not super high. Yellow, mid-range, and red being significant turnover and attrition. So we know that those yellow and red states are competing for those same teachers that we're competing for. And as Denise and I are working with multiple school districts across our state, we hear lots of concern about qualified workforce. So that's really what prompted us to say, well, why are people leaving? How can we support teachers so they stay in the profession or want to come to your district? So I'm sorry for the interruption.
Oh, thank you, Julie, at any time, please. So we wanted to share this with you. This is some data by Ellen Moore. She is the director of the New Teachers Institute. And many of you are probably familiar with this dip. Maybe you've experienced it yourself, where at the beginning of the year when staff are coming in, there's a high level of anticipation and hope for the year. As things get rolling, it's a little bit of survival, like, oh, here we go again. You know, there's a lot to do within the school day and at home to help support students. And then down about November, December, typically I remember as a principal is like, all right, the week right before Thanksgiving was always very difficult. December, January, you know, it seems like it's dark and the days are short and feel like they're really long. So that disillusionment sets in. And then as we head towards spring and spring break, there's a little bit of rejuvenation, time for reflection, like, oh yeah, this year, you know, this year turned all right, and then goes back to anticipation again. So this is the data from Ellen about new teachers. We're going to share with you the next slide about veteran teachers. And as you can see, it's similar with the exception of that little hump through November, December, January, where the honeymoon phase turns into survival. And there's a little time for reflection for veteran teachers because they know the curriculum, they know what to expect. And instead of working nonstop over winter break or Christmas break, you can have a little time to reflect, relax, and reconnect with your family and others. So sometimes there's that little bump before they head down into the disillusionment phase. So similar, but with our veteran teachers, many times there's that little bump over the holidays instead of staying at the lower levels. Julie, is there anything else you want to offer?
Yeah. I'm just looking at the month of March, the disillusionment in the month of March, February and March. And if we go back a slide, February and March here as well, with the new staff, here's the time where many of them would make a decision to leave the profession or to resign to the fall and say, I'm not coming back next year. I can't do this. They typically don't wait until May and June to say, I can't do this anymore, because they're feeling it in the winter months. And so they make a decision about their life. And so what we're hopeful here is that we can intervene and support those staff members before they make a decision to leave the profession, to leave a district, in the times where they're feeling like things are really rough.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Mhm.
So what does this mean for education? Well, turnover is costly. And so as you look at all of these different steps on this slide, we're really talking about a number of things. We know that teacher turnover impacts student achievement, and that's what we're focusing on, right? We need to have qualified, happy individuals in front of our students so that they can learn and be the best that they can be. We know that when there's turnover and somebody doesn't make it through the year and a new teacher comes in, not having that experience impacts students. We also know that when there are vacancies in buildings, that impacts the whole school as well. It could be that you have teachers teaching on a variance or teaching with a larger class load that they're used to. And so all of those things can impact the students. So there really is a cost to school districts in the area of student achievement when there is high turnover within their staff. Julie?
Yeah, so we want to share some of the research and ideas around how can you provide support for the employees that you have. And in particular, like Denise said earlier, we're talking about those who directly impact instruction. So strategies for your custodians and for your food service department or transportation might look a little bit different, but the ideas that we're going to share here are around instructional staff primarily. So the first thing we want to do is to start with just a short breakout session where we'd like you to think about what are the skills that that person needs to be successful. What are the skills that a paraprofessional needs to be successful in your school district or in that position? What kind of support do they need for their emotional well-being? And what's different about their needs now than what we've had in the past? So in the breakout rooms, we're going to ask one group to answer those three questions for paraprofessionals. So from the paraprofessional lens, another group will be asked to do it for teachers that are tier 1 and 2, meaning they're new to the profession. They're a probationary staff member, and in some cases, they're not licensed. They might be a community expert that's been hired into your district, and so their needs for support are going to look different than someone who's got a teaching degree or been a veteran teacher. And then your tier 3 and 4 are those who've been in your district a little bit longer. So, and the last group will focus on the leaders. What kind of support, and again, thinking about the role they're in, what are the challenges they face, and therefore, what are the support strategies that they might need? So group 1, when you go into the breakout rooms, if you are room 1, you're going to focus on paraprofessionals. Room 2 is going to focus on teachers that are tier 1 and 2, meaning they're probationary or they are new to the profession, potentially not a licensed educator. This group 3 will be veteran teachers, and then group 4 will be leaders that are instructional leaders, such as a principal, an assistant principal, dean of students, instructional coach, those kinds of things. So with that, these are the three questions. I have a spreadsheet created. If we would like one person in the group to say that you'd be the note taker or the reporter, and I'll put the spreadsheet link in the chat box or the chat thread for everybody to reference, and we'll send that back to you so everybody has the ideas that are submitted by the group, and then we're going to move into what the research said. So we'll take about 10 minutes for this. Any questions before we go to the breakout rooms? I'll put the link to the spreadsheet and the three questions in the chat. Again, group 1, paras, group 2, probationary and new profession, group 3, veteran teachers, group 4, instructional leaders. All right. All right, excellent. Well, thank you for spending the time in the breakout room. Let's just take a minute or two from each group to hear some of the conversation that you had about what support might need to look like for that employee group. Could group one, who was talking about paraprofessionals, is somebody willing to be the reporter for group one?
I think Joel will, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh,
Same
yay, Joel.
Yeah.
I'll take it. I'm Joel Baumgarten. I'm the new superintendent at Buffalo Lake Hector Stewart. I've been in education for 37 years and in a lot of different facets. So after talking with Gary, we came up with some things about paras. Skills needed. Paras are maybe assigning a para to students that they might have a strength with and a relationship with is always a good thing. And so creative scheduling and assignment is imperative. Proper training and understanding of the job and requirements, with the para training and things like that is also needed. There are definite social emotional skills needed as a para, and teaching some of those things, patience, the way to redirect, CPI, is that what it's called? And working together, teamwork and communication with a teacher. Those are all skills needed, as well as some kids have some anger issues and other issues, being able to redirect. So those are some things we talked about.
Awesome. Thank you. How about group two with our teacher group, the new teachers?
I don't know which teacher group we were in, but we did have teachers at the top of ours.
Okay, awesome.
Can
All
certainly-
teachers. You got all teachers.
All right. Jeremy, Melinda, please step in if I misspeak at all. But from a skill standpoint, we talked about a need to understand that education's changed and that students have changed as well. Needs are different. There's more conversations around AI and technology. And there are trained professionals, so trusting them to do what they do and share what they know, but also recognizing that things have changed, and there's need for adaptation to that. And in terms of supporting their emotional well-being, it kind of ties a little bit with that skills, but understanding more of the depth with ACEs and with trauma, and restorative practices, so that they can be open to new ideas that encourage movement activity and not just the sit still and behave practices of the past. Just making sure that they have that right education, so they know how to respond to those incidences or in big emotions. And then from that standpoint, also buildings that facilitate and help those sort of items that support sensory needs with pathways and have mobility spaces so that students can get rid of the wiggles and help mitigate some of those big emotions. And then what's different about needs now versus the past? It was mentioned that in a lot of negotiations, they're seeing a lot of conversations for more time and flexibility requested over pay. So some of those sort of things.
Awesome. Thank you. That's excellent. And the last group was around building the leaders, instructional leaders. Who was voluntold for this one?
All volunteers, since I took some notes.
Awesome.
But around skills, we just discussed some skills around, delegation, people skills, relationship building, recruiting abilities, and then that idea and sometimes dichotomy between instructional skills and just general management type skills. And then we talked a little bit more around the support and for their emotional well-being around, that idea of a work balance or work-life balance, some people may say, and also a little bit around mentor, the mentors or networking with their colleagues. And anything else my fellow group members would like to add in?
No, I think you captured it. Those are some of the biggest things. Yeah, I think those are the biggest things. Recruitment for teachers is going to be a tall task, right? And I think the place that one of the two places I'm at, like another person to note was that, can't fill an English position, where you're using a sub for in English. It used to be, and I am an English teacher. And so the fact that there's no English teachers out there is pretty scary. So it's things like that. And I just noted that I know as part of the platform for both MASA and MSBA is recruitment in the profession, because it's such a glaring need. And one thing that Deb talked about is that we're a 10-year cycle away from flipping this somehow and then getting more people in the profession. So there's a significant gap, and how we overcome that gap is going to be a huge leader problem, before we can come back to it. And so I think, like I noted in the meeting, what we talked about is the idea that superintendents who are from my generation and even older were used to, hey, you show up for work, you do your thing, right? That's what you do. And that the kids have changed. The kids going into college have different wants and needs than what they were when we started our journey. And so understanding how different that is now is going to be part of the challenge of recruiting people to the profession. So
Yeah, you are absolutely right. So we're going to jump back into this. We'll share a little bit about what research said for retention, and in some ways this supports recruitment as well, because you'll notice your staff when they're being hired ask more questions about what's available for support. And so a district that has more to offer in terms of support is going to be better positioned for a yes from that candidate. But these are the 5 areas that research is saying that the workforce needs right now to keep them essentially happy or wanting to stay in your district. So we're going to dive into these 5 just a little bit here. And then we have a really innovative strategy that we are just implementing this year that we're going to share at the very end. But onboarding is something most districts have some form of already in place. And so the district level onboarding, pretty straight up, is like, what's your email address? What's your, the password, and really the technical things. These are the benefits that you have. Here's your personal leave days. Here's how you fill out the form for the personal leave days, that kind of thing. And then the building level, some of the simplest things that we can't overlook are those: where do I hang up my coat? Who am I going to talk to? Where am I going to have lunch? If I need to turn in my mileage, how do I do that? Just those very basic. And so the onboarding training is really not about professional development as much as it is survival. And the technical aspects of the job. So, and that is for all employees, not just for instructional employees. That's really for every employee. And that's the first impression. So when they come in and that's their first impression to how they feel about your district, it's really important that they feel like you valued them being there. You're happy that they're there to start working in your district. Then when we start looking at mentorship and induction, there's 2 sides to this. Mentorship is typically in place for a lot of paraprofessionals have a mentor. Teachers have a mentor in many districts, and at times leadership. But typically a mentor is a person that you would go to. Research would say it's best if it's formalized. There's a formalized process, so it's not haphazard or only as needed, but instead is, there's a cycle to it. Why are the mentors meeting with other mentors? That there's intentionality around what's the skill of the mentor. I'll say, when I was a principal, I remember one of my teachers came to me and said, "It's my turn to be the mentor this next year. It's my turn." But that person did not have the skill or disposition to be a really good mentor for a new person, to acclimate them to the culture that you want in your district. So being intentional around having a really quality mentor is important. There's a difference between a buddy program mentor, which is the informal, and then the comprehensive one, which is more of a formalized approach. So neither one are exclusive. I think in some cases you have a little bit of both in your system. The induction part of this is what really is what research is around, that this is the professional development side, and it's teaching about culture. It's getting your people to understand the values of your district and the practices that are institutionalized. So An example of that, I'm aging myself when I say this, but 6 trait writing was something that we had in place in Alexandria when I first came to town. And everybody had to learn the 6 trait writing process, whether you're a Phi Ed teacher, a music teacher, brand new, every single person. We had a method of behavior management. Everyone had to learn it, and it came through the induction program because you're trying to catch up your new employees with the training that you've had for all of your other employees in the past. And you can't underestimate the importance of that with induction. So other strategies we're seeing around professional development, this came out in some of the things that you were talking about, lots of training, but it's really the just in time. You can't always predict what you're going to need. So just in time professional development as well as planned, that we use the human-centered design mindset. And that means you start with you start from a sense of empathy and say, what do they need versus what do I think they need? So using the human-centered design mindset changes the perspective on planning professional development. It's like, what do I notice that they need right now? Many of them simply need work time because they feel overwhelmed. I think Katie shared this with flexibility, but the hybrid model and trying to build some flexibility into professional development is really critical. Your staff at all levels appreciate this and not using a one-size-fits-all approach. We feel like sometimes professional development, people don't want to participate if it means they have to prep for a sub, and that being able to maximize perhaps a retired teacher to step in that already has a bit of a skill set in that area might minimize the resistance to professional development during a workday where someone would have to have a substitute teacher. The life balance piece in districts that really intentionally promote life balance. It's things like flexible scheduling. And I think both Bob and Scott, you talked about that too. The need to be flexible, to think differently, maybe have childcare available. Like, what are those benefits that you can make available that make someone feel good? That really is about their work-life balance. That's not so rigid. Asking the question, how can we save time? Where are there ways that we can streamline or save time for in every single role? And sometimes it's about sharing responsibility. Everybody doesn't have to do everything. In a smaller school district, especially in an elementary classroom where when math is up for review and reading is up for review and science and all of those things, there's only 1 or 2 teachers that have to take on all of that. How can you find a way to streamline that for the benefit of your staff? And are there some tools that are available to you, technology, AI, those kinds of things that we resist in many ways, but there are tools available that can help with this. And at the bottom there, exploring creative benefits for retired staff members. In other words, if you have a skilled retired staff member who knows behavior management, who knows some things about technology, are they worth more as a sub to you than a general off the street kind of substitute? So can you put some creative things in place to encourage those who are retiring to come back and substitute and support your teachers? Under the recognition and appreciation, the Gallup and WorkHuman Institute both have worked together. And here's what they say about the research: that strategic recognition needs to be fulfilling, so appropriate for the accomplishment, authentic, and that's having somebody tell you for how they really feel about what you did and a little bit more in depth. It's that feedback, like we say to when teachers are giving feedback to students, good job does not really tell them a lot about what they did well. So it's authentic, but it's genuine as well. And specific, so not always in front of the whole staff, but to the person. So very personalized. Everybody appreciates being recognized, whether it be one-on-one or being called out in a staff meeting or recognized in a more public way. Personal recognition matters. Equitable. This is really about recognition and appreciation that's around people's achievement and their skill, the work that they're doing, not around favoritism. So, there's times where we might tend to recognize those same people or publicly. I've seen this happen too, where you have a closer relationship with someone. And so you publicly you're making jokes and it looks like favoritism if you're doing that to a single person or groups of people, and not really about the performance of everyone in the group. And then embedded so that it's really part of the values of your organization. Do you believe in celebrating and recognize people, and making sure that you're doing that in a more formalized way? And the empowerment and autonomy strategy is about advocating, helping people to advocate for their needs, for what they need, helping them build a growth mindset because things are changing. And that idea of we want fidelity of implementation, but we also need to give autonomy. So build the sandbox, but let people play a little bit in the sandbox using their own personal strengths and interests. And the last one is around productive discourse. We know that people in the organization don't all have the same beliefs, and personal beliefs, political beliefs, behavior management beliefs, values. So how do we encourage good discussion in a productive way, that's civil, and that encourages rationality and problem solving? So those are our key protocols for empowerment and autonomy. And then we want to kind of shift into the creative piece here. So be sure that when you're thinking about methods of support, the considerations, what do people that are new or probationary need? What do all staff need? And those are some pretty common things. We see role-alike support a lot. You see wellness committee activities, and a lot of times that might be around fitness or nutrition or social gatherings. And then also recognizing that people need personal or individual support that's consistent and authentic. So with that, Denise is going to share a really new, innovative strategy that we're rolling out through Partner Ed. So Denise.
Got it. Thank you. So, some of you had talked about the competition and that you're going to be going after teachers where teachers often in the past, they had a district and they stayed there. Now we know that if there's a district close by that has better benefits, offers a better life-work balance, better salary, all those kind of things, that they are moving more quickly than they have in the past. So what can we do? Well, all of you can be part of an innovative solution. As Partner Ed has gone across Minnesota and the country, one of the consistent things that we heard from school board members, superintendents, and communities was, wow, we're really concerned about having quality staff in front of our kids. So we thought, what can we do differently? And what we decided to do is bring in groups of educators for focus groups across the spectrum. And we created something called, if that's okay, Julie, go ahead, Violet Cares. And you can see Violet in the top left-hand corner there. Violet is an app that is on educators' phones, and it delivers messaging and support consistently throughout the day. The educator has the ability to decide when that is. We found that many people like to check in with Violet during lunch, or Fridays and Sunday nights seem to be a big time for them to check in as well, or early morning. And so I'm going to tell you a little bit about Violet and how it can impact your staff. So one of the things when we tried to think about how do we support staff, and if an app was a way to do that, just sharing with you here that we found, and you can look at the percentages, that people do use apps. You've heard of some people use Calm to help them with some of their well-being type health things, Noom for weight loss, and just a number of different things out there that are apps, but they aren't for educators. And so Violet has been created by educators for educators. So we know the life cycle, we know when it's tough in a school district, we know about the life of a school educator and what they need to have to feel supported based on their feedback and the research. So the Violet approach is proactive. It really helps educators actually have it's anonymous, but it helps them have a voice in what their PD and what really the community and even larger at the legislative level know about being an educator. So educators can check in daily. They're controlled by the user. We use quotes, stories, videos to help support the content for them. So it really depends, if you like inspiration, there'll be inspirational messages. We are working with some districts who they've had certain content, like Elena Aguilera's work on supporting educators, Dr. Greg Bell. We can integrate that into the app for districts. But we really, the most important thing that we found is educators wanted this to be anonymous so they can be very clear about what they're feeling about their day and their work. But they were also very clear with us that they wanted us to be able to share metadata on themes with the district and with our state legislators and leaders about what they need as educators. So Violet is a tool that can help you understand if the resources that you're using and the money you're spending right now are actually having an impact or not. And if you look at Violet, just a couple brief overview of her tools. As I said earlier, there are content snippets, and you can see a little example of that, although it's kind of smaller there, where at the top there's a quote about inspiration, and then there are videos. And again, this is content that's relevant to educators. This is all about being an educator, whether it's a paraprofessional, teacher, or leadership position. As you move through the content, the more you engage with it, the more it is, number 3, personalized for you. And so we do check-ins on the right-hand side of the lower part of the slide there. You can see that there's a check-in. Those check-ins give educators affirmation and appreciation. They also recognize when they're not having a great day. It's not about judging, it's about that daily incremental help to help educators move from where they are to a better feeling of well-being. You can see on the left-hand side there, I mentioned the personalization. The content is just not a whole bunch of things that are put together that are pulled up. It's based on psychology and neuroscience to talk about what the educator is feeling and what can help them move from a maybe not so great place to more growth mindset based. I can get through this. Other people are doing this as well. The final piece I'll talk to is number 2 at the top, the emotional tracking. That is the piece where we can give districts data on how their educators are doing, what they're feeling about their well-being. Do they feel isolated? What are the things that are working for them or not working? And we can also give that data to our legislative representatives to say, here's really the state of educators. If Minnesota wants to be different, we need to have tools and data to look at that actually help us make a difference and advocate for what our teachers and our educators need. So that's just a quick little bit of overview for it. You can also see with this slide here, and I'm almost finished to wrap up, but Violet is really a one-stop shop. I know some districts who have used Calm for their well-being and others that have looked at, educator tips and tricks. Violet is really a combination of these and other apps, all focused on the experience of an educator. So there are humor portions, there are content and curriculum portions, there are tips and tricks for health and well-being. There are, if I'm feeling isolated, what are some resources to help me? If there are some behavior management things going on, there are tips and tricks for that. So one of the educators who was using this told us, it feels like I have my own personalized PD in my pocket at any time, where if I have an issue, I can pull it up. If I'm, just the daily inspiration and appreciation pieces, having Violet in their pocket is a reminder that their district and their superintendent, school board care about them and are investing in their well-being and their future. So that is kind of a high-end overview of Violet, and we'd love to, talk to anybody about this. All the things that we've talked about today, retention, offering things that impact our professionals on a daily basis, really are wrapped up into the tool of Violet. So with that, Julie, is there anything that I missed that you want to comment as I went through that last piece fairly quickly?
No, I think you covered it all. Thank you.
The other piece I will just share before we wrap up is with Violet, we are, she just emerged and was created by a design team that's a global design team. So she's diverse, she meets the needs of a diverse population. But because we are into the second half of the school year, it's very affordable for school districts. And so if that's something that you think you might be interested in, we have some districts who are paying it, their actual unions are paying for it through union membership dues. Some are using professional development, some are wellness committees. It really depends on, what situation they're in, but there's lots of options. And we have some businesses supporting Violet as well for the educators in the community. So that's what we have for Partner Ed today. And I'd also like to just share that we didn't mention earlier is for any of those needs that you or others might have, your colleagues that you need extra help or support with mentorship or induction programs. We do that support at Partner Ed as well. So feel free to reach out to Julie or I if we can support you in any way in any of these ideas that we've shared today. It's 45 minutes is a short amount of time to share a lot of information and research. And if you want more specifics, we're happy to do that.
Thank you, everyone.
Questions or thoughts from the group? Things that are working well in your districts that you want to share? The one thing I would add, kind of based on what Rob was talking about, if you haven't seen the messaging kit from Rose Chu's group, and now I'm forgetting the name of it. Well, there you go. It's my senior moment of the day. But if you Google Rose Chu, Elevating Teaching, there we go. The messaging packet that her group has created for recruiting teachers, I think is fabulous. It's easy, it's clear, and it has pieces that other people within your community can be using. So if you haven't seen it, I'd recommend reaching out and requesting one of the messaging kits. Because Rob's right, we need to do a better job of selling our profession and recruiting people to the field. Rob's 10-year turnover is great only if we start recruiting right now.
Right.
Absolutely. Yeah, Rose's information is a great resource as well. Yeah, thanks for sharing that, Lori.
Yep. All right. Well, we thank everybody for being here today, and we look forward to seeing you virtually and in person.
Take care,
Yeah.
everybody.
And bye, everybody.
Thanks all.
Bye.